From this lecture on, you're now about to begin learning the various concepts of project management. There is one word you will hear over and over again in this course, and that is the word project. So let's first start by understanding what is a project. A project is any work that lasts only temporarily, meaning it has a specific start when the work begins and a defined end when all the work is set to be completed. More importantly, projects create a unique product, service, or a result that did not exist before the commencement of the project. Lastly, projects are a coordinated set of activities done with some goal in mind and with a defined plan to follow. As an example, construction of this building is a project since it started at some point in time when there was no structure and ended when the building was fully constructed. Another example of a project is building a website from scratch by creating all its content and putting it on the web pages and finally posting it onto the internet. These activities are considered as part of the project, but the subsequent maintenance and support of that website are considered operations. Sometimes what is a project can be well understood by knowing what is not a project. Activities that are continuously ongoing without a defined start and an end, and those which create the same result again and again are not projects. These are called operations. As you see here, car manufacturing is not a project since there is no specific start and a defined end to this process, and the same car model gets manufactured continuously like a million other models before it. Note that the work done to create a unique car design from the inception of the idea to the drawing board and finally putting it into production is considered a project, but the next steps of actually manufacturing it on an assembly line are considered operations. Sometimes projects can end prematurely even before the final product or service is delivered, and this may happen due to many reasons, like the lack of budget to keep the project going or the loss of support from a key stakeholder. We define projects as a set of coordinated activities, but how do we know how to coordinate those activities? It is this field of project management that guides us how to apply the knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques onto projects so that the resulting activities are coordinated and structured and follow a well-defined methodology. Without project management, you would not know where to start, how to approach the work, and the important steps to be taken during the course of the project. Project management is efficiently juggling through many activities at the same time and simultaneously maintaining your balance and composure. A project manager is that individual who can skillfully and effectively coordinate these set of activities through the application of project management methodologies and principles. By taking this course, you are well on your way to learning those skills and techniques needed to become a better project manager. In the where portion, we saw where in the organization are all the people who will be involved on the project. Every organization is uniquely structured in terms of reporting hierarchies that are sometimes permanent in nature. On the other hand, projects, as we saw, are temporary in nature. Hence, as a PM, it is important to understand where in the organization is your project being executed and what kind of organizational structure you will be operating in. Although there are mainly three kinds of organizational structures, there are many shades of them that you may be actually be working in. And as a project manager, you may find yourself walking a tightrope between these organizational structures. Functional organizations are set up to give authority to the functional managers and least to the project managers. These organizational structures are centered on specialities and grouped by function. Example, HR, finance, marketing, or information technology, etc. Decisions on projects are to be cleared and approved by the functional managers because in here, the functional managers own the budgets and resources completely. Working as a project manager in here mostly means assisting the functional managers to getting their work done. The project managers may be doing administrative tasks in addition to managing projects. As you see here, functional organizations are siloed, and due to their compartmentalized nature, it is difficult to communicate through these lines that are enforced by the organizational hierarchies. In a functional setup, you see that there are heads of these departments who are the functional managers, and under them are resources, who they completely own. On the other side are projectized organizations that give much authority to the project managers. Their focus is on the projects themselves, and to deliver with speed on projects, foster loyalty onto projects and not to the functional managers. In here, the project managers control all decisions related to the resources, budgets, schedule, quality, etc. Teams that are in projectized organizations are organized around projects, and the teams move from one project to another when the projects are done. As you see here, the project managers tightly control the resources under them and hence have the capability to deliver on projects with speed and efficiency. In between these types of organizations, there exists what are called as matrixed structures. This means the project managers share authority with the functional managers to a level that benefits to both sides. In here, project managers run people management decisions by the functional managers, and the functional managers run project-related decisions by the project managers. These kind of setups are called balanced matrix environments. And as you see here, although the project manager sits in a siloed department under a certain functional manager, in this case under the HR, he or she still has communication lines across the organization through various departments. Unfortunately, you will almost never find a perfectly balanced matrix environment. There are two other shades that you need to be aware of. When the balance of power shifts towards the functional organization, then it becomes a weak matrix environment, as shown here. And when it shifts towards a projectized environment, then you are in a strong matrix environment, as shown here. In a weak matrix, project managers have some authority over resources, but they're not fully in charge of resources, and they may be allowed to make some project-related decisions. In a strong matrix, though, the project manager has a lot of control over resources and largely makes most decisions on the projects. There are some peripheral topics in project management you have to be aware of before we discuss certain topics in this course. When you work on projects, you will realize that not everything is under your control. There are many factors you can't control and are exerted from outside the project that may or may not have influence over the outcome of the project. Nevertheless, it is important to realize their existence and include them as influencing inputs to many processes that you will see soon. These factors are called the enterprise environmental factors, and some examples of these are government regulations that dictate how a specific industry has to operate, the market conditions that will put constraints around the schedule or how much can be spent on the project, and sometimes political climates also dictate how projects are done. On the other hand, there are many assets that may pre-exist. These are called the organizational process assets, or OPAs. Organizational process assets are an organization's internal policies, procedures, guidelines, templates, systems, and best practices that the organization may already have and may have been collected from the past experiences. These will also become important inputs to many of the processes you will see soon. As a project manager, don't imagine a world wherein you have unlimited amount of resources, the amount of time you have available to deliver on a project, or unlimited amount of money to be spent on the project. On almost every project, there are limitations to the amount of resources that can be put into it to accomplish the goals and the objectives of the project. These are the restrictions that are inherent to any project, and they dictate the actions that will be taken by the project manager and the project team. These are called project constraints, and they are anything that restricts the actions of the project manager and the project team and constricts them to work with limited resources. Constraints on the project can be of many types, and they need not be limited to the scope, time, or the cost, and they could be anything that inhibits the work of the project team to perform their work in a certain way. Generally, the constraints pertaining to the scope, time, and budget are locked in a triangle called as the iron triangle. It is so because these three constraints dictate how the project is going to be set up and executed, thereby defining the entire makeup of the project. The component of time is the most unmissable element on a project. From the point when the project starts to the point in time when it ends, a lot of work goes on during the project, but it's important to realize that not the same kind of work is done at all times. To make sense of what kind of work, the entire project duration is divided up into 5 main process groups. Under these groups are numerous individual processes that define the activities that will be done on a project based on the phase it is in. The 5 main process groups are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Notice the ending of each process group is ing in the active sense. The initiating process group is the first phase of the project where you put together all that is needed to start the project. Sometimes it is here that the project manager is assigned on a project, and it is here that the project is officially recognized after all the necessary approvals are in place and obtained from the people who are in authority. At the end of this process group, the project manager is capable of formally kicking off the project. The planning phase is when you as a PM does most of the work in planning for what is to come next on the project. By the end of this phase, you will have the project management plans ready that will become the guiding documents and the roadmap for the rest of the project. The executing phase is when the real project work happens. It is here that the project teams work to build the final product or service. This process group consists of processes to complete the work defined in the project management plans to satisfy the project specifications and requirements. This involves coordinating with people and resources, managing their expectations, integrating and performing activities needed to deliver the outputs. Even when the project work is progressing forward nicely and according to the plans, the project manager must perform certain tasks of monitoring and controlling. It is here that the project manager is required to track, review, and orchestrate the progress of the project, identify areas of changes to the plans. Any corrective or primitive actions are also initiated here. And finally, in the closing phase, all concluding activities are done that closes all the project management processes and any contractual obligations. All